I didn't know where I fit in anymore. I like to say that there's goods and greats, and you should figure out who you are before you chase yourself down a rabbit hole.
What's up, everyone? I'm Nils Mindnich, and this is the Backcountry Podcast, a show aimed at providing insight into the outdoor industry by interviewing people who operate within it. Today, we are going to be talking with Spencer Whiting, aka Gimbal God, aka plenty of other nicknames that we might get into. Gimbal God here was made famous by his ability to follow cam the best park riders in the world off the biggest jumps in the world, which should maybe tell you something about his snowboarding. But arguably, he found his true success and continuing success through his tenacious work ethic and optimistic outlook on life. Spenny, what up, bro?
Dude, doing really good. So stoked to be here.
Yeah.
This is rad.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the studio. We, what I think would be kind of cool to just get into is we really haven't hung out a whole ton. Snowboarding's funny because you operate in similar to parallel universes and spheres at times, but we never really spent a ton of time together. And then last week we just clocked some hours.
What
were we up to?
I guess we started off with a nice 13-hour car ride with me. I feel like that's a good place to get a baseline of where I'm at. And then we were up at, we went Nelson, 2 days of first aid, up to Baldface for 5 days of risk maturity, which is kind of like a conglomerate of a lot of different modules from AVI 1 to just basic risk management practices. But it's been really cool because over the last couple of years I've been hanging out with Sage a lot. You and Sage are really tight, and it's been cool just from back in the day doing contests with you and your brother to now being older and all of us kind of pursuing this life in the mountains, and just getting to watch you and Sage work together last year. It's just so rad to see.
Yeah, dude. I think it's really cool, and I don't know, for me it's a really good way to shock my system to get back into the season and get my mindset and my head in the right place and sort of make that adjustment to be in snowboard mode. And I'm curious your perspective too. I kind of had a slower roll into backcountry riding. I've been filming for about 10 years. I think this will be my 10th or 11th year filming in the backcountry. And it's honestly the last 3 years, I feel like I've gathered some confidence to make decisions and understand the process of it all. But you're a somewhat newer into it, and I feel like you've just jumped head in, and it shows.
Yeah, I mean,
how's that process been?
Since back in the day, I think the first time I'd ever been on a snowmobile, I was between 14 and 16. My buddy Graydon McCullough, he was kind of the ringleader at the time. His dad got Gray a 46 600. And I remember the first day, both of us going out on that thing, just got it so plugged on some random hill. We're doubling, no idea what we're doing. And, eventually that led to my first backcountry trip. It's 17 in Jackson. And we were fortunate to get to go out with Kyle Clancy. And he kind of showed us the ropes a little bit. I was on the 46 600. It's good sled to learn how to sled. I was kind of back of the pack guy, and it was where I was kind of focused on contests at the time. Gray had kind of chosen the backcountry route. He was filming with John Jackson. He'd known Kyle Clancy. He kind of was our guy to get us into it. And I think where Gray kind of chose the backcountry route, I kind of chose the contest route. And it got to a point where I didn't know where I fit in anymore. I like to say that there's goods and greats, and you should figure out who you are before you chase yourself down a rabbit hole. And, I was 20 years old, no podiums, not even at a Rev Tour. By this point, if you look at any of the top guys, entering the contest knowing you're going to make the podium. You know, like I feel like,
yeah.
You know, it's a brutal reality, but I kind of chosen to take a step back from contests, and I just I did a year working at Sushi Ray at Mammoth, riding 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Just riding the mountain. Like, and I didn't even touch the park. I think I only did a 720 that year. And, you know, that's coming off the year before trying to learn 41260. So for me, it was like, I was just really trying to like learn board control. And then, you know, I would say the hardest part was watching all my friends travel the world. And like, even though how sick Mammoth was, it was like, you had that, you know, kind of, I don't know if animosity is the right word, but like envy, like, Dude. You know, like as a Grom, you want to go. And I remember like, I pinned it to Aspen last minute, probably shouldn't have. And I remember it was like, we rode Snowbass one day and it was like run one, I like torqued my like hip and I couldn't even ride the rest of the week, but I went out to like, you know, I kind of wanted to film a little bit, maybe be in the next edit. And, you know, I think circling back to like diving head in, it was like the very brief foundations were there. Right. And then I got the opportunity to work with Stale, and as we had developed into our relationship, you know, we'd done little backcountry things. We went to Whistler for 4 days. We got to, you know, a little bit of heli time with like Oakley Week. And I started to kind of like piece things together. And, you know, in 2018, we were in New Zealand, and Sage told me how his future, he was kind of looking towards taking more classes and getting more experience into guiding and everything. And it was kind of like, there was like this thing that clicked in my brain that was like, well, if I learned to snowmobile and I learned to film and I learned the safety procedures, then maybe I can be like an asset in the mountains. Because I think when you're young and you're forming a crew, or if you're joining a crew, you really just want to be with people you trust, and if shit hit the fan, that are going to have your back. And I think that was a, you know, even 3 years ago now, taking my first risk maturity, just realizing what we've gone away with. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to, prior to that, not having taken an avalanche course, but being surrounded by people who are really experienced. Like my first trip to Alaska, I went with Jamie Anderson, Robin Van Gin, Austin Sweet, and E-Jack. So it's just kind of a take a step back and watch scenario. And I was super nervous. I'd never been up there. I was supposed to fly the drone. The drone I rented was broken. It was just like, you know, a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of wind, and like it was really hard to find zones. So it was like kind of cool that it was like the slowest pace first AK trip. Obviously for like E-Jack, Robin and Austin, they're like kind of like, you know, but I'm kind of like, hey, you know, I didn't mess up too much. There wasn't much to mess up. And I think it's like the collection of experiences and like, you know, being at a point A and seeing a point B and just trying to get there. You're going to fail along the way, but that's where like, you know, you kind of, you find your right trajectory. And I feel like, you know, like the last 3 years, by really committing, like I've gone all in to learn the most that I can. And I think the main thing I took away from like the last week in Baldface was like, okay, now let's like take a step back. In 7 years, you'll get to the point to where you have enough information to be making decisions that are going to push the bar. But the thing in the mountains, it's like you just said, you've been filming for 10, 11 years, like, and you're just starting to feel like it clicks. Like, I feel like I've been filming backcountry for 3 years now, and it's like, I just feel like I'm at the point where I understand what's going on, and now I'm going to try and learn. And hopefully on my 10th and 11th year, it's like okay, we want to do this, we can do that. We want to do this, we can do that. But there's so much, there's no shortcut to there. It's your experiences and the experience you gain, usually when something goes wrong, that makes you make the better decision on maybe the more consequential products. But I think that's like, I've just, I have an addictive personality. I think a lot of snowboarders do.
Yeah.
And I just think that I feel like when I'm in the mountains or I'm in the ocean in the middle of nowhere, but feel self-sufficient, like it's where I feel the most alive, you know?
Yeah, dude, totally. That was all so well put. And I feel like what's been really cool to see on your front and Sage's front, and in a way, like, almost circling back to like your perspective on the contest kids, that then like when you stepped out, they like accelerated. And I actually had kind of that same relationship with competing. Fortunately, I had opportunities that I was able to continue as a rider, but like, you know, I had that experience too of being like, I lost my sponsors at the time, like Burton and Red Bull. And I couldn't travel. I couldn't get in a contest. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's tough to see your peers essentially. And I like all of my peers around me, like that was like the next wave of Olympians, you know? And I'm like, damn it. And granted, I was doing cool stuff, but it put me, and I was just so much younger at the time. And what I think's, when I'm going full circle here is sort of you and Sage have this like, again, tenacity, this work ethic that you understand there's something to figure out, and you kind of just start putting your best foot forward in the process. And I think that's something like, I would argue that, you know, especially you and Sage in the last few years, like Sage especially, like I remember first filming with him that I was like kind of showing him around, and then the next year he filmed Joy, and it like eclipsed anything I had ever accomplished. And it's like, it's interesting. There's all these sub dynamics. And what I'm getting at is it's like inspirational to see you guys, how like fast you've figured out backcountry snowboarding, but also like the reality check for me to be like, oh, that's the amount of work I should have been putting in 5 years ago. It like hindsight's always 20/20, you know, but like, it's cool to see like you're doing it right. And it's like rad to see how, I don't know, how compounding it is. Right. And that's, there's no shortcuts. You put it super well.
There was like a conversation I had, and it was the year before I went to Alaska for the first time. And I'd kind of expressed that like, oh, I'm going to like do this and this, do this NST, you know, learn a little bit. And I want to go up to Alaska. And like the other person was like, dude, like you can't do it. Like you got to put in, like, you got to go here first, and you got to go here. Then you got to go here. Then you got to go here. And like, to me, it was like, I was like, whoa, like, are you saying that like, you know a lot more than me? Or like, it was like, I was like feeling weird that I wanted to go to Alaska, but someone was telling me like, you don't know enough to go there. And I think that right there is like the gatekeeping of Alaska, you know, like you have to remember that like the main clientele that is in Alaska is clients that, you know, can afford $250K to go have a good time in the week. And those guys are just riding like essentially greens and blues. And like, I think one thing that people forget about Alaska is it takes a lot of years up there to even comprehend the scale and the power of those mountains. Yeah. And, you know, I've been up there 3 times now, and in total probably spent 2 months to 10 weeks in total. And I feel like I have just like opened the first page, you know? And I think in order, like I knew it when I wanted to start, it was like, you know, I looked up to the standards, the Mac Dogs, you know, like Hostenik, Kurt Morgan, and like Hatchet, and a lot of these dudes that like, they're filmed from helicopters. They're filming like the most beautiful snowboarding that like I think is possible, you know, like free riding is the pinnacle. Like Craig Kelly said that years ago. And I think we went through this era of like Olympics, and then, you know, that being the hype, and, you know, Shaun White taking us from like this subculture rebel punk thing to the most recognizable American in America at that time. And I think, you know, snowboarding almost like jumped like to a level to where like, you know, in that risk maturity graph, it's like you start here, you go at the bottom, you take all the AVI classes, you work, and something catastrophic happens, and then you work your way back up. It's like snowboarding's like first catastrophe was like I would say right now, like, you know, I've dedicated my life to snowboarding. I don't understand the contests anymore. It doesn't make sense. It's irrelevant. I think it's...
I know. Well, it's weird too. And I think I was talking to you about this or someone else where it's like, and we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but I really like where this conversation's going. So I want to run with it. And you have a finger on the pulse because you spent so much time in this world. But yeah, competitive snowboarding, it's difficult because I think we're entering this phase that the next top athletes in contests, like, you don't know who they are. And the like kind of red flag there is the whole like, well, what's that say about the sport? That people within the sport don't even know who the like front runners are in a way. That's how I see it.
Totally. I mean, I think that like as a kid, right? Like I remember watching X Games and I saw Torstein Horgmo do a switchback 12 flawlessly. And you're like, what in the heck is like, no way. And then, you know, the next day you're in South Park at Mammoth trying to front 7. Like, you know, you can get to that 1260. And like the way he did it was so smooth. And there's like, you can reach it. I just feel like we've gotten a little lost where like ski aerials were capped at 4 flips. We're heading into 5 flips.
Yeah.
I don't need to say much else, but like if the judges are going to just keep rewarding that way, then I don't understand why all the snowboarders don't boycott the judges.
Yeah.
The snowboarders talk a lot about it's rider power, rider this. Well, guess what? A lot of you guys are soft because you're competing in an event where like you have to risk your life. And you're having all these coaches tell you that like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And like, you're going to do it. And like, unless you lace, even if you lace, you win 11,000. If you kill yourself lacing, your medical bills are going to be much more than $11,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing, I think, that doing those tricks inspires the like 5-year-old to go snowboarding. But it's like when I show my roommates, you know, Judd's latest film, what's the part that they jump out of their seat? The second he drops into that spine line in Alaska and they feel like they're there with him. And it's like they can relate and it's like they haven't seen these like big mountains and faces and power and beauty. And it's like, isn't that snowboarding? The way you link those turns down the face, the decisions you make along the way. And I just think that our first catastrophe is kind of competitive snowboarding right now. And like, you see it in a lot of riders, like, you know, it's harder to get budgets, you know, the influencers are taking over. You have people that started a YouTube in May of 2023 in December 6th have 823,000 followers. What did that person do? They put a GoPro on their head and they rode the baby park every day and they interacted with people. They threw a mic on them and they threw some text on YouTube and they posted, I don't know, 1 to 3 times a day for a couple months. Takes a lot of work. It's pretty kooky. Or kooky in the sense of pro snowboarding culture.
From our lens. Yeah, from a cultural.
But it's also genius.
Well, I know. And that's like, and that's where you got to step away and see, I don't know, see the big picture. And this is like why I'm psyched that we're in here to talk about this too, because I feel like you've had this really good ability to like step back and look at this sport that we all love from a 36,000 foot, you know, airline level and be like, what architecture is working out here, right? And because like what we came up on and were inspired by and what pulled us in is the culture and the lifestyle. It wasn't the like actual mechanics of a 1080 of being like, it was like the aesthetic, it was the clothing, it was the energy around someone performing that like trick, right? Yeah. And yeah, that's the tricky thing to see that contests are sort of losing that flavor in a way. And then like but what is exciting is that the fire is still there and it's cool that people like yourself and Sage and like I'm trying to be a part of this scene that, you know, respect to the dude that's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube and for cringy content. And like, it's an argument, right? Because people are relating to that guy, and isn't that important?
Super important.
You know, but then like on the other hand, you kind of need like, it's a
North Star.
You need like your North Star in a way. And like that flavor and that, like, I think that's important. And I feel like maybe it just goes back to like, I don't know what it goes back to.
Well, I think it's like, you know, what's rad is like Backcountry as a company can say, hey, we want to tell more stories about the people that are actually in the culture. And you and I can be sitting here having a conversation. We can put it on the internet and we can reach people. And these are like, in my opinion, like really meaningful stories and information that like should be out there to the public. In order to like do that for the entire fabric of snowboarding, it takes a team. There's almost like just not enough budget to build the team to tell the stories at the level in which it needs to be told, to get other people who like maybe be from Florida, maybe be from wherever, that they might not have seen snow in their life. But if that story can hit where it's like in some way, shape, form, emotion, or like at any level, you can like tap into that person where they're invested in what you're speaking about, that's the hardest part. And in order to do that, it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of planning, and you got to do your homework.
Yeah.
But I think it's tough to think long term when it's hard to get money and you're losing sponsors or
right. You know like it's a difficult balance, and that's why like I commend you, because having spent the week with you, I realize that you're thinking 5 years, 10 years, just the general future like of the sport versus, you know, myself. I'm trying to get there, but I'm still like working out the kinks, because where I was is the traditional perspective of a pro snowboarder, which is I'm thinking, how do I film at the best clips I can in the next 3 months to hopefully get my contract renewed in 1 year or something. Totally. And like, I don't know. There's something to be said for that, being able to step back and look at it long term.
I think I just like I know you have your engineering degree, right? You know, like I don't have a plan B. Like I went to school for 3.5 years and I pulled the plug to go work for Ståle Sandbeck because I believed that school would always be there and that opportunity wouldn't. And now that I'm 6 to 7 years along that road, it's pretty powerful what you can do in 6 or 7 years. Imagine in 15, you know. And I wrote a bucket list when I was I think I was 14, going to my first professional event, the Grand Prix, and is a half pipe contest at Mammoth. I remember I'd watched the Bucket List movie with Morgan Freeman, and then I wrote my bucket list, and it's pretty crazy that I've been able to like tap off most of the things on that bucket list. And a lot of them, you know, stem with snowboarding. And this was at a moment in time where I was really just starting. Like I'd been snowboarding since I was 3, but like at 11, I did my first rail jam. And, you know, by like 14, I was doing my first like proper half pipe events. And I think it's, you know, I've always known that like this was it, like since I was a kid. And it started with skateboarding, and then it transitioned to snowboarding. And, you know, in my late teens, early 20s, I really have like focused on surfing. And it's like, my only plan is to build a life around all this. Like I can't go to a desk job. I don't have a degree. I don't have the patience. I'm too obsessed with like being here and seeing something that's really impossible or unattainable and just breaking it down and being like, you know, even taking like, you know, Travis trying to go film in Kamchatka. Like, you know, you learn the main airport, then you learn the military airport, and then you do the mileage, and then you do there, and then you calculate fuel, and then you know, add that into how much a helicopter costs. And you're like, okay, well, that was like $96,000 to like just go there. And then it's, you know, then you got to add in guides and it. But like, I feel like for me, that's just like my passion is breaking down how people do things and then kind of figuring out how to do it the dirtbag way, where it's like, all right, can we just talk to these people and maybe get a deal, or like talk to a tourism board, or, you know, and I think pitch decks are really important. Like I think my 3.5 years in college, the main thing I learned how to do was build a pitch deck. And it started on a very small scale, and it's developed over the years. And I feel like we've kind of learned the art of the pitch by now, but that's what I learned the most in school. And, you know, I majored in finance, so I was really intrigued by how someone can loan someone money and put an interest rate on it and be making money, and then, you know, maybe sell that package of loans to someone else, and now it's there. And then I was just really interested how like debt leverage and like how the business world operates. Cause like most of the richest people in the world are severely in debt. It's just they make their payments. Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, I may be like in some way like an outsider of like the core industry, but like, what is the core industry, you know? Like,
yeah. And dude, I think that's something important to touch on too, like on a micro scale, and this might go over the heads of some of the audience too. It's in like snowboarding, there's like a core nucleus, like, point that like even pro snowboarders can point to and be like, yeah, that's like these are like the center of like the most authentic characters. But it's a double-edged sword too to be in that place, because at one point you're like so dedicated to the culture, but then on the other aspect, like it's almost the starving artist concept, right? Like you gotta figure out how to balance being authentic and creative, but appease to something bigger than that like can pay for your red camera.
You know? When I think like, I don't know, like for me, I just want to get people stoked to snowboard. Like in the very simplest terms, I want to just show people how beautiful it is. I always, when I was snowboarding, I wanted to be, I would see like, I think Kurt Bereska, like back in the day on like the Movi and the Red, he had a shot of Ben doing a front three into the camera. And it's just like, you know, it was so, I was just like, that makes me feel like I understand the scale of it. And I think that influenced the way I shot, and, you know, shooting from the front, or like where you're bringing features into the picture versus like already seeing them ahead of time. And, you know, I think it's cool when people text me and they're like, dude, I haven't snowboarded in 15 years. I just like bought a snowboard, or like I just hopped off my skis and like this stuff looks so fun. Like, doesn't that help the core community, because they're more likely to buy their products and like support these companies? Yeah. And like, yeah, you know, sometimes I work for Procter & Gamble. Sometimes I work for Toyota. Sometimes it's Monster Energy. Like those are big companies that like have nothing to do with the fabric of snowboarding, but it's like, in a way, it's like if they can pay me and I can invest that money back into snowboarding, like, isn't that a good thing? Don't we want outside money to like go to like this beautiful thing, you know? And like, I don't know. I think for me, and my girlfriend will probably call me a little crazy, but it's just like, you can always make more money or figure out a way to find it. But you can't always have this moment at 28 years old in peak physical condition with like a storage of camping gear and like all of Alaska to go live in for free, as long as you can get there. And I just look at it like there's so much out there. And like we grew up watching like Travis and Jeremy riding these, but there's mini golf, just no one looks at it, but like you can go ride it and hike it. And like, I think for me, I really just want to try to learn as much as I can in my toolkit over the next like 5-10 years to get to the point to where like, yeah, maybe we can make a decision to like, we really want to go do this pretty out there thing. But I think what I've just been trying to learn is just, you know, like not being so like impulsive or, you know, impatient, just understanding that like, I would love to be, you know, 50 years old, taking my family up to a place like Baldface. I don't need to be 30 years old at the bottom of a crevasse, but people just like look at the daredevil dropping that line. They don't see the, like in the traditional sense, like if you have a PhD or, you have a law degree or you have a master's, you're pretty respected within the traditional environment. Even a doctor, like, if you're doing the surgery, like by that point, you've probably 20 to 25 years of experience thinking about chemistry and, body anatomy and different things. Like you look at a guy like Jones and he's your PhD,
Yep.
and Travis and Xavier and all these guys that have done it. And maybe like they didn't really have so much of a blueprint, but I think it's like really paying attention to your mentors and not thinking, or not like what Jones said, ego's not your amigo, like not thinking that you got more skills than them. And like, oh, I can do, like, you're going to get bit in the ass. And I think that's the thing, like Sage said it this morning, that I think it was a quote that Walk said from one of the guides at Baldface. And it was like, the mountains have been here long before us and they're going to be here long after us. We just have to choose the right time to dance with them or to ride. Yeah. And, I think that's a pretty powerful statement because...
Well, dude, it's even like applicable, so much of that stuff too. I feel like, and I'm sure you have something to add to this as well, like the psychological or like mind tools that you need to safely navigate and understand and do what you want in the mountains, like the risk assessment and the mileage, and that mileage and understanding of risk gives you your intuition, all these things, right? That kind of like just take time. There's no shortcuts to get them, but eventually you acquire this understanding, we'll call it, of how to make good decisions in the mountains so that you can have fun, be rewarded, but also manage your risk along the way. And it's just like, I use that stuff in my day-to-day life. And I feel like it's so helpful where I'm like, all right, like risk, reward. Okay, maybe like I forgot to do laundry last night. Let's buy some flowers before, wife gets home, right? Or let's like mitigate.
100%, 100%.
Like, it's wild because you see dudes like Jeremy Jones is a great example. They both are, but we were just spending time with Big Mountain Jeremy Jones, and like he said he rode 186 days last year. Like I feel like I don't know if I break 100 days. Yeah. And I think that's just a testament to the amount of mileage it takes and like the intuition that gives you to make good decisions along the way.
Yeah. And I think a huge part of, I think the fabric of maybe like the 20s, like we're in the 20s, 4 years deep, like mental health's been a huge thing. That was a big chapter at Baldface. It was a big chapter in my life.
Significant chapter for me.
Yeah. And maybe I was going through it 5 years too early, before people were really talking about it. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And, I lost a lot of my friends and, family members didn't trust. People were worried and I didn't see that. I thought that is like, you're leaving me out. And I think one thing we talked about is just talking to other people, or, what I found that I think, a couple of the speakers talked about was writing, just getting your thoughts out. I was really like, just defeated going to a therapist, or that's how I just felt like I don't need to be here. You don't know shit. That young kid type of mentality, not understanding what it is. And for me, I put the date down, write my mood, write, where I was, and just write what's on my brain. Sometimes I wrote pages. Sometimes I wrote a to-do list. It doesn't matter, but to get things out on to a physical form where it's out of your brain and you can read it and process it, it's a really powerful thing. And I've been doing that since 2015 pretty much. And I truly believe if you just, and that's what, I spoke on another podcast a couple of weeks ago about just putting 2 hours in a day.
I listened to that one. You should take that and run with it for a bit.
Like
it's a cool topic.
if you have your 10,000 hour principle and you put in 2 hours a day, that means in 5,000 days, you're going to be a professional at whatever that thing was. What if you make that 10 hours a day? Then you could do it in 1,000 days. So maybe 3 years. 3 years at it, and you can make it happen. I feel like, back to the backcountry thing, me diving head in, dude. I like the hours I've spent just calling heli leasing companies, operators, pilots, guides, different people in different countries to see how snowpacks are. Like I start planning the season now for next year and try and just make sure that I'm leveling up at the progression level that I want to. But I think the thing I've learned is that in order to do that, you need to start early, which just kind of means that like at least 2 hours a day, you have to be thinking about what have you done? Where are you at, right? In the season. Like I'm really excited to be here at this point, because I feel like I've been pretty much locked into like a 18, 19 month project, and I'm going to finally get all the files done this afternoon. But then it's like really, I think like for this year, I'm pretty creatively tapped and everything's pretty dialed. So it's like, okay, my brain just goes, let me just go in my journal and start writing ideas, basically just brainstorming. But I think it's, for the younger rider who like hasn't really put in enough time or like been around long enough to really understand how like what the best way for them to plan a season is. And I think you like learn that by doing. Like in the beginning days, it was like where the contests were. And then it was like Mammoth, because I was working and living there. And then it was like, okay, we're going where Stale is going. And then it was, it's kind of had its evolutions. But I think for me, it's like I just want to facilitate the highest level snowboarding in like the safest, most efficient and effective way. In order to do that, I'm just like such a greenhorn, right? Like I just am so green. I'm asking dumb questions, except there's no dumb questions, because the only thing they're gonna say is like, no, sorry, we can't do that. And then you call the next guy, and maybe he can help you. Yeah. But I think,
well, dude, I think what you've like tapped into as well, and what I think is a big testament about your like success, and like you're like hungry. That's fucking sick to see. And it's cool because you can you have this ability to like positively connect the dots between like, oh, that's what Travis or Jeremy did.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is like you like rationally can break it down, and I feel like that makes you just like all of a sudden you take this huge thing and you break it into bite-sized pieces. Like maybe there's someone out there who's like, oh, I want a PhD in astrophysics, but like I just failed my first math class in high school. And it's like, well, one step at a time. Yeah. Like you can't have the whole pie at once. And it's like, I think the trick there is not to get intimidated or disheveled, like breaking down that process, and just sort of like make those what changes you can while you can.
It's very similar to, say, like a multiple person burial in an avalanche, like what Buff was talking. Like you have to section the thing off. You got to make sure you follow your process, and you can break the thing into pieces to really like think about how it happened in the first place, where things went. It's the same thing with anything anyone's ever done, ever.
Dude, I know. And it's crazy how much it like, I don't know. I've talked to Shane Charlebois about this, because his like perspective on the world, and I've chatted with him, and he's like, everything, there's just kind of like a pattern is how he sees it and interprets how the world works around him, is that there's just like patterns you pick up on. Yeah. And like in my mind, the word I would use is architecture. And like, I think what the guides use in Baldface is the process. And like, it seems like, that's sort of what this whole conversation is almost like centering around too. It's just sort of, I don't know, figuring out like, okay, like a system, systematic way that you can like get to where you want to go.
And it's, if someone's done it before, it's possible.
Dude. Yeah.
And it's a matter of getting your mental framework there to understand that you're capable of it too.
This is what I want to talk to you about too. 'Cause you, in like 10 minutes of just shooting the shit with you in Baldface, I like even came to a better understanding of how pessimistic I can default to of like, well, I would like to do that, but it won't work. It might not work, or it couldn't work for X, Y, and Z reasons. And you're like, well, I just don't like to like take the pessimistic view. Like, how does it work? And like, you have this like a pretty cool positive outlook on where you want to get. And I think even transitioning from being gimbal follow cam or like GoPro follow cam guy to now owning numerous Red cameras, right? And like owning the space you want to get in. You probably, I mean, I'm sure it's intimidating, but it also maybe, if I had to guess, was this like motivated, positive process to get to the position you're at now. And probably it seems like your outlook is still positive to get to where you want to go.
It's just managing risk, you know. I think money scares a lot of people. And like for me, that was a huge part of my upbringing. We were always broke, lost my condo multiple times, lived with friends, couch surfed, grew up in a really wealthy area. We lived in the Section 8 housing part of it, but you see all these people with it. And I think, for me, I always just knew that it was possible. It was like, if there's this many people around me who've like made life happen and were able to buy a house and do it, it's just a matter of like, how fucking hard do you want to work? Like my mom works 18 to 20 hours a day. I grew up on that, so you're a product of your environment. I'm not saying that's healthy. It's not at all, but certain people have certain, chemical differences than others. Like some people can't deal with alcohol and drugs. Some people can, and if you have any sort of chemical instability and then you add sleeplessness, drugs, alcohol, it can affect everyone in a very different way. I've learned that like by cutting out substances, I can sleep less. But I have to be sliding scale. But I have to be disciplined on the no substances, right? Because like if you're gonna get 5 or 6 hours of sleep and you're dead sober, you're gonna sleep a lot better than 5 or 6 hours of sleep with 2 beers. It's just a fact. Like if you were to monitor your body, you're gonna recover faster without the beer. Elevation as well when we're most likely dehydrated. So it's a compounding thing, and I think it's super simple. Like in the summer, I have fun, and in the winter, I cut it out because there's too much on the line for my personal manifesto. If that makes sense. Like I'm not looking at it as there's too much on the line because I have X, Y, and Z to do for the brands. It's like it's detrimental to my vision if I'm not on point for the next 120 days. And like,
does it feel like a lot of pressure?
No, it's just fun. I think for me, it's like, I never thrived in a contest environment pressure because I never was really confident in my riding to where like I entered that contest knowing I could kick Sage's ass, that's like how you like when he's dropping in the Olympics, try like that run that one, like you have to be dead ass confident that like you got it. And like, I think filming has really brought out my ability to like hone in on the flow state. And it can even start all the way from the producing, like to planning the trip in October to like getting in the heli and like shooting like a 55-second one line of tour gear and like somehow you laced it. And it's like that shot is the culmination of like 9 months of work, and I think that's just what keeps me going is it's just like, can I just like make what's possible that's in my brain? And like, I think it applies to anything. I think, I've always said I'm going to put my head down until 35 and then I would like to have a family. But I've kind of like set those parameters for myself. Like I know my sister has mapped out her entire life until she's 50.
Let's give a quick shout out to your sister too, to interject. Like 2 seconds. She deserves like a quick recognition because I haven't met her, but
yeah, she's a gangster, neuroscience, has some pretty crazy goals. And, whenever I'm in the mountains, I think about her and I think about if my situation is at all uncomfortable or difficult, just how uncomfortable and difficult her situation is. And, she's glad to be here. And I think, no matter how difficult it is, you got to remember good, like what's the next step forward?
Dude, having those people that I don't know. There's something to be said as well about surrounding yourself or knowing people that like just have that drive, work ethic and drive. Like, you know, my wife Brianne's like that. She will put in a like 16 to 20 hour work day some days. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. Well, maybe I can do like 2 sessions if I have time today, can I train for 6 hours today? You know, like, I'll be freaking uncomfortable and I'll probably climb like shit, but at least like, if that's what my day is going to look like, I can just own it and like take it to the max. My recovery. How can I like make sure I'm stressed and doing physical therapy and whatever? And like, then the actual business side, like what's the best email I can write? How do I like, you know, like, okay, I'm watching TV. What emails can I do or whatever?
I think it's just a forever skill, you know, like
it's a habit.
And it's really hard. Like, and I don't discredit anyone who like maybe hasn't found out their process, you know, cause like, I had a different process for sure. Like, you know, the summers, like 2010 to 2015, they were much different than what my summers were 2015 to 2023. And I think everybody at some point is going to grow up, you know? If and everyone has their own timeline as well. Like you can't compare yourself to other people. The best thing you can do is surround yourself with the people that you think are going to help elevate you to the next level in your life. And I don't mean that by like going to hang out with someone for like unauthentic or disauthentic reasons, but like I think surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals that are all striving to be the best human being they can possibly be on a daily basis is the real winner. As far as like, if there was one piece of advice I would get anybody, it's like, check your friends, dude. Like in 3rd grade, I was surrounded by some pretty like bad influences. You know, my parents had just split up. We moved to California. I just had my skateboard. What was skateboarding in 2005? It's a subculture of fucking rebels. Like, dude, I had spiked blue hair, Hot Topic pants, choker on, studded belt, studded wrist sleeves. Like, and I had like World Industries backpack with 100% punk on there. You know, I was throwing rocks at fire alarms, like skating the stair set at lunch, getting suspended, like didn't give a fuck. But I did that at 7, 8 years old, you know, like everybody has their time. And, you know, I was, you know, in with the goth and the scene and the emo kids and listening to Slipknot and MCR and Linkin Park. And it was like, that was my shit, dude. But that was like 7 to 11, you know, like that was like when I was like heavy in skateboarding, like that's what I was doing. Like first concert ever, Linkin Park with a broken leg. Like mom brought like me and my skate friends. Like, that's
an insane quote.
You know, like that's just like who I was, and I was the outcast, you know. And I think then I got into middle school and like pretty much none of my friends skateboarded. I lived in Southern California, everyone surfed. And I like, you know, at the time you're like starting to want to like, you know, find some girls, and like it seemed like the girls were down with the surfers. So I was like, you know, it's pretty, and none of my friends wanted to skateboard. So I was like, it was pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to learn to surf, you know? And like 11 to 18 was pretty brutal, you know, like surfing is a very large learning curve. And it took me 8 years to get to a point where I was, you know, feeling good. And, you know, I think it's all funny because you go through all these different cultures and, you know, they're all so different, but at the end of the day, it's like everyone is on their own timeline. So it's like, you know, what maybe the stuff I went through at 8, someone else is going through at 24 or 18, and like, it doesn't matter. And you have to respect that. And I think, you know, like there needs to be shit talking, but like, you don't have to be a blatant asshole. Like I've had multiple, like the most uncomfortable place that I ever feel in my life is Salt Lake City. Like
I know we've talked about
and
that.
Like it's wild, you know, like, and I don't know what I've done to other people, but like, it's interesting when you go up to say hello to certain people And I just think in myself, it's like, wow, is that how you like treat
the world
like in other individuals? Because that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And like, it's, you know, it's not everybody, but it's like the few individuals that do that. I just like, it's really like, are you okay? You know, and that's what I think, you know,
dude. So that's like, I have that same thought too. If I see people that are like, and granted, not on a different scale than you, but if I just have an interaction, a negative interaction with someone, if someone's mad at me in some way or whatever, or you get a vibe, it's like, and it's hard to have that thought, but it, like my default as well is like, oof, I like feel bad for you that you like see me in the world this way. And I don't know. And I don't think I'm an asshole. But
I think, you know, I think for me,
it's like a weird, I don't know. That's like a life skill almost to figure out how to balance.
Yeah. And I'm not the best at it. Like I'm like a total introvert. Like I have massive social anxiety. So then you like have that and then you compound it with like people vibing you. And it's just like, I just don't want to be there. Like,
yeah,
I want to be in the mountains or like be anywhere, you know? Yeah. And I think, you know, that's something like for me that like I'm working on personally, but I think, you know, it's like, it's crazy to like have interactions with people that maybe like throw the vibe off and like, maybe I don't know them or they don't know me, but it's like, I feel like I don't try and do that to other people. And it's crazy to like be on the receiving end of it. Mm-hmm. And you don't know, like, I don't like people call me turbo. I'm fucking crazy. Like once I hit that 6,000 RPM mark, you know, it's like, it's hard for me to get back into like
pressure gauge kicking in.
Yeah. And you know, that's like I think the coolest thing that I'm learning is patience and sticking to a process. And it's really hard. You know, I've traveled, you know, between 250 and 330 days a year for 6 years now. Even during COVID, you know, I was in Europe for 3 months. And it's really hard to have a routine when every day is different, you know. A lot of people forget that routine. Like, you know, you might hate your desk job, but like
when you got your 9 to 5, it's
it's pretty sick. Like I'm very jealous of like all my roommates.
Some days I'm like, dude, did I brush my teeth today? What, like you wake up and you're like, where am I? Wait,
yeah. It's like, oh no, I forgot my toiletry kit. I have to go buy all new everything.
I haven't called my chick in 5 days.
Yeah. Seriously.
Totally, man. Well, dude, that was really cool insight. And it's sick to like get your perspective and just like your outlook on the world around you in a way. And it seems like you're, in my opinion, a good example of someone who just kind of is like, try keep the ego in check and like refine.
And the ego in check's the hardest thing. So
hard. And you know, especially when like things start working out too. When you get a good positive response, you're like, hard not to be like, I am sick.
Just like, I think it's like but
it's a balance, right? Of confidence and ego.
Yeah. It's it's a lifetime dance that you're never going to perfect. But I think you can always refine your process in anything.
Yeah, definitely.
It takes time.
Well, dude, on that note, I kind of want to pivot and we can start to get to the tail end of this thing.
Yeah.
First off, maybe you could give us a quick rundown of just like the kit that you're running in the backcountry.
Yeah.
Because I think most of the stuff, Battalion, Oakley, all those things they're on the site. So worthwhile to give a quick shout out.
Yeah. Kit wise, I guess we start with the board. I've been running a ton of different boards these days. Current like Party Wave Plus, Camel 2 have been like the main 2 boards I've ridden since I've been on Battalion.
Those Battalions, yeah.
And then I'm riding, there's a new one called the Turbo. And there's the Goliath that I'm going to be messing with a little bit over the next couple weeks. Super fun snowboards. Kind of like Quiver style. There's a board for, you know, what you're trying to do. And then I guess camera kit and backcountry, like that, you know, really depend. Like lately, like I've been saying now till, you know, end of January, my kit's pretty much going to be my GoPro and an iPhone. Keep it simple. Just be able to film everything at any time in a simple way. And then when we start getting into February and March, probably bring out the red cameras. And I use a Shimoda backpack I think it's the Action X70. It's really good to fit a lot of clothes in. It's also really good to fit the big cameras or first aid kits. You know, like it has a sleeve for all your backcountry, you know, probe, shovel, saw. And that's kind of the backpack I run. Really good product. I've been running mine for like 3 years. I just had to get new straps, but good investment. And that's kind of like the kit. I run Oakley outerwear and goggles, and usually have a GoPro on my head at some point.
Perfect. And then what, you just had some projects come out recently too. If people want to check out, what should they be looking into?
Yeah. Tour Gear's Temple of the Dog project is up on Monster Energy's YouTube. And Judd Henkes project, Greenhorn, comes out December 12th, probably by the time this comes out. So both of those will be up on Monster Energy's YouTube.
Yeah.
Give them a scope.
Shout out. They are both sick projects. Judd's especially. Man. They like,
Thanks.
It's cool to see. I mean, you and Judd dive in on, it's not a spoiler alert that it's surfing and snowboarding.
No.
And yeah, Spenny is a proficient professional capturer of both mediums, and Judd is definitely very proficient at riding and surfing both mediums. So it was really cool to see.
Fun art piece to make.
Yeah, totally. And then, dude, I just kind of want to open the floor for anything else you want to share? Any thank yous before we wrap this thing up?
I think just, you know, like there's been a lot of people that have gotten me to where I am, and I think they know who they are, but I just want to say thank you, snowboarding, because it's pretty wild to get to be in this industry and to be 29 years old and feeling like it's day one, you know? And I think for any individual who's looking up to anyone, and could be any type of industry, but if you have like some sort of inkling that like that's your passion and that you believe that you could make a difference in that industry or in that vertical, go for it, because the worst thing that's going to happen is it doesn't work out and then you can go back to what you were doing. I think people get caught up on thinking life's harder than it is, but you know, it's just getting comfortable with that risk.
Just got to do it, man. Well, dude, well said. Thanks for everything. Super sick. Just getting to like sit down and pick your brains and talk shop. It's always a pleasure.
It was a good Monday. Or is it Monday? It's Tuesday?
I think it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday?
Wednesday.
It's a good Wednesday morning. Good Wednesday morning podcast.
It's 1:00 in the afternoon, actually, on Wednesday.
That's how much of a blur the last 9 days have been. It's a good, and we're out.
And we're out. On that note, also, thank you to everyone who tuned in or listened. Hopefully you liked the show. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you have any questions about Spenny's kit, make sure to hit up a local gearhead. And from the crew at Backcountry, we will see you out there.